The first part of our plan was to gather irrefutable evidence. Patricia used her key to David's house to install hidden cameras in our home office and living room. We needed to catch David and Emma together in our house, which would add insult to injury. Sure enough, 2 days later, David called me at work to say he was sick and staying home. The cameras caught Emma arriving at our house within an hour of my leaving for work. They spent the afternoon in our bedroom, using our bed for their affair. Watching the footage was difficult, but it gave me the motivation I needed to follow through with our plan. The second part involved Patricia creating a fake family emergency that would require David to be out of town for the weekend. She called him crying, saying she had fallen and needed him to drive her to a specialist in the city 3 hours away. David was annoyed but agreed to take her, which meant he had to cancel his plans with Emma. What he did not know was that Patricia and I would be using this time to prepare the final phase of our revenge. While David was away, Patricia and I went to his office. She still had access as his emergency contact, and had convinced building security that she needed to retrieve some important family documents from his desk. We planted a small recording device in his office and installed software on his computer that would forward all his emails to an account I had created. We also made copies of files that clearly showed he had been using company resources to facilitate his affair. The third part of our plan was the most satisfying. David was up for a major promotion at work, and his company was throwing a celebration dinner for all the regional managers and their spouses. This dinner would be attended by his boss, his colleagues, and their families. Patricia suggested we use this event to expose his affair publicly. At first, I was hesitant because it seemed so extreme, but she convinced me that David needed to face consequences from all aspects of his life, not just our marriage. Men like David rely on people keeping their secrets, Patricia said. They count on their wives being too embarrassed to speak up and their families being too polite to cause a scene. It is time someone called him out publicly. We spent 2 weeks preparing a presentation that would rival any corporate presentation David had ever given. It included photos, emails, credit card statements, hotel receipts, and even screenshots from our security cameras. The night of the dinner arrived, and David was in an excellent mood. He had no idea what was coming. I wore my best dress and played the role of the supportive wife perfectly. Patricia also attended, as she had been invited as David's mother. During the cocktail hour, David made sure to introduce me to his boss and several important clients. He was charming and professional, and I could see why people liked working with him. It made what we were about to do even more satisfying. When it came time for the formal dinner, David's boss gave a speech about the promotion and asked David to say a few words. David stood up, clearly enjoying being the center of attention. "I want to thank everyone for this incredible opportunity," he began. "I could not have achieved this without the support of my amazing family." That was Patricia's cue. She stood up and cleared her throat. "Excuse me, everyone," she said loudly. "Before David continues, I think there are some things about his character that everyone should know." The room went silent. David looked confused and slightly annoyed. "Mom, what are you doing?" "I am exposing you for the cheating, lying person you really are," Patricia announced. She walked to the front of the room where there was a projector screen used for presentations. I joined her, carrying a laptop with our prepared presentation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Patricia continued, "my son David has been having an affair with his assistant, Emma Richardson, for the past 4 months. He has been lying to his wife, using company resources to facilitate his relationship, and violating numerous company policies." The room erupted. David's boss looked shocked, his colleagues were whispering among themselves, and the spouses were staring at David in disgust. David tried to interrupt. "This is insane. You cannot do this here." But we were already starting the presentation. The first slide showed a photo of David and Emma kissing in our driveway. The timestamp showed it was taken just 3 days earlier. The next slides showed emails David had sent to Emma from his company computer, including explicit messages and plans for romantic getaways. We had credit card statements showing thousands of dollars spent on gifts for Emma, charged to an account that I had helped pay for. The most damaging slides showed how David had been using company resources for his affair. He had scheduled fake meetings to spend time with Emma, used the company credit card for personal expenses, and even given Emma a promotion she was not qualified for. David's boss, Mr. Thompson, looked furious. "David, is this true?" David tried to deny everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. Several colleagues were already taking photos of the presentation with their phones. The final slide was a statement from Patricia. "I will not stand by and watch my son destroy his marriage and abuse his position of power the way his father did to me. David, you have brought shame on our family, and you will face the consequences." The room was dead silent when the presentation ended. David's face was red with humiliation and anger. He looked at Patricia and me with pure hatred. "You are both insane," he hissed. "My personal life has nothing to do with my job." Mr. Thompson stood up. "Actually, David, it has everything to do with your job. Using company resources for personal affairs, giving unqualified employees promotions for personal favors, and lying about your activities all constitute serious violations of company policy. Consider yourself terminated immediately." Security was called to escort David from the building. As he was leaving, several colleagues shook their heads in disgust, and I could hear them discussing how they would never work with him again. The best part came the next day when word of David's public humiliation spread throughout his industry. Within 48 hours, he was essentially blacklisted from every major pharmaceutical company in the region. Emma was also fired, and when David's affair became public knowledge, she wanted nothing to do with him. She had been planning to leave her husband for David, thinking he was getting a promotion and would be able to support her. When she found out he had lost his job because of their affair, she immediately ended their relationship. David tried to come home that night, but Patricia and I had changed the locks. He found his belongings packed in boxes on the front porch along with divorce papers. He called both of us repeatedly, alternating between apologizing and threatening us. But we had already taken everything to my lawyer and filed for divorce on grounds of adultery. The financial consequences were devastating for David. Not only did he lose his job, but the prenup he had insisted on actually worked against him. Since I could prove adultery, I was entitled to a larger portion of our assets. Patricia testified in the divorce proceedings about David's affair and how it mirrored his father's behavior. Her testimony was particularly damaging because it established a pattern of dishonesty. If stories of cheaters getting destroyed by their own family get your blood pumping, you are in exactly the right place. Smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because Revenge Janet delivers fresh revenge stories that will leave you absolutely satisfied. Trust me, the stories coming up will blow your mind. My name is Janet, and I am about to tell you the most incredible revenge story involving the most unexpected ally, my mother-in-law. This is how a woman I thought hated me became my partner in completely destroying my cheating husband's life. I married David 3 years ago after dating for 2 years. He was everything I thought I wanted: successful, charming, and from a good family. His mother, Patricia, was initially cold toward me, and I assumed she thought no woman was good enough for her precious son. Our relationship was polite but distant, which I accepted as normal mother-in-law territory. David worked as a regional manager for a pharmaceutical company, while I was a nurse at the local hospital. We had a comfortable life, a nice house in the suburbs, and were trying to start a family. From the outside, we looked like the perfect couple. The first sign something was wrong came 6 months ago when David started working late constantly. He claimed his company was going through a major restructuring, and he needed to be there for his team. I believed him because he had always been dedicated to his career. But then other things started changing. He became secretive with his phone, started going to the gym obsessively, and bought new clothes claiming he needed to update his professional image. When I suggested we could go shopping together, he insisted he preferred to go alone because he knew what he needed. The biggest red flag was when he suddenly became interested in weekend work conferences that required overnight stays. These conferences always seemed to be in cities just far enough away that driving back the same day would be impractical, but close enough that flying seemed unnecessary. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Marriage requires trust, and I had no concrete evidence that anything was wrong. But my instincts kept telling me something was off. Everything changed on a Thursday afternoon when I got off my shift early, due to low patient census. I decided to surprise David by bringing lunch to his office. I had called ahead to make sure he was there, and his assistant confirmed he was in back-to-back meetings all afternoon. When I arrived at his office building, I saw David's car in the parking lot, which confirmed he was there. But as I was walking toward the entrance, I saw him coming out of a side door with a woman I did not recognize. She was beautiful, young, and clearly his type, blonde, petite, and dressed in an expensive business suit. What made my stomach drop was not just seeing him with another woman, but how they were together. He had his hand on the small of her back. She was laughing at something he said, and they had the easy intimacy of people who were very comfortable with each other. I quickly hid behind a pillar and watched as they got into her car together. David looked around nervously before getting in, which told me he knew what he was doing was wrong. I followed them at a distance, my heart pounding. They drove to an upscale hotel about 10 minutes away. I watched from the parking lot as they walked in together, David carrying an overnight bag I had never seen before. The evidence was overwhelming, but I needed to be absolutely sure before I did anything. I sat in that parking lot for 2 hours, and when they finally came out, their body language told me everything I needed to know. Over the next few days, I did some investigating. I found out the woman was Emma Richardson, David's new assistant who had started working for him 4 months ago. She was 26 years old, recently divorced, and according to the company directory, she was quickly becoming one of their most valued employees. I also discovered that those weekend conferences David had been attending, they corresponded perfectly with business trips Emma had been taking. The late nights at work, the gym memberships, the new clothes. It all made sense now. I was devastated but also furious. David had been lying to my face for months while carrying on an affair with someone who worked directly under him. The betrayal cut deep, but what made it worse was how stupid he thought I was. I was planning my next move when something unexpected happened. Patricia, my mother-in-law, called and asked if she could come over for coffee. This was unusual because while we were polite to each other, we rarely spent time alone together. When she arrived, I could tell something was bothering her. We made small talk for a few minutes before she got to the point. "Janet, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me," she said, her voice serious. "Is David having an affair?" I was stunned. I had been trying to figure out how to handle the situation. And here was my mother-in-law asking me directly about it. "Why would you ask that?" I said carefully. Patricia sighed deeply. "Because I have eyes, dear. I have been watching him for weeks, and he is acting exactly like his father did when he was cheating on me." This was the first time Patricia had ever mentioned that David's father had been unfaithful. David had always painted his parents' divorce as amicable and mutual, never mentioning infidelity. "David's father left me for his secretary 25 years ago," Patricia continued. "The late nights, the sudden interest in his appearance, the unexplained absences, I have seen it all before. And when I saw David with that young blonde girl at the mall last week, buying her jewelry, I knew exactly what was happening." I realized that Patricia had been conducting her own investigation and had reached the same conclusions I had. "So you know about Emma," I said quietly. "Emma Richardson, 26, recently divorced, works as his assistant," Patricia recited. "Yes, I know about Emma. The question is, what are we going to do about it?" Though we surprised me, I had expected Patricia to defend her son, or at least remain neutral. Instead, she seemed as angry as I was. "I will not watch my son destroy his marriage the same way his father destroyed ours," she said firmly. "David needs to face consequences for his actions, and I am going to help you make sure he does." Over the next hour, Patricia and I shared everything we had discovered. She had been watching David for weeks, and had even hired a private investigator to confirm her suspicions. She showed me photos of David and Emma together, credit card statements showing expensive gifts and hotel rooms, and phone records proving they had been in constant contact. Patricia's motivation was clear. She had been devastated by her husband's betrayal, and had always regretted not fighting back. She saw David's affair as history repeating itself, and was determined not to let him get away with it. "I raised him better than this," she said with disgust. "And I will be damned if I let him think this behavior is acceptable." We spent the next week planning our revenge. Patricia had access to information I could never get, and I had the emotional motivation to see it through. Together, we made a formidable team. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. David lost the house, half his retirement savings, and had to pay significant alimony. Without a job and with his reputation destroyed, he was forced to move back in with Patricia temporarily. That arrangement lasted exactly 1 week before Patricia kicked him out for bringing different women to her house. She told him that until he showed genuine remorse for what he had done, he was not welcome in her home. The last I heard, David was working as a sales associate at a furniture store and living in a small apartment across town. Emma moved to another state and got back together with her ex-husband. Meanwhile, Patricia and I developed the relationship I had always hoped we could have. She apologized for being cold to me initially, explaining that she had been protecting herself from getting too attached in case David turned out like his father. I knew there was a chance David would cheat, she admitted. I just hoped I was wrong. When I saw that I was right, I decided I would rather have you as a daughter than him as a son. Our revenge was perfect because it addressed every aspect of David's betrayal. He lost his marriage, his job, his reputation, and even his family's support. The public nature of his humiliation ensured that everyone in his professional and personal circles knew exactly what kind of person he was. Some people have criticized us for being too harsh, but I have no regrets. David made a choice to betray me and abuse his position of power. He counted on me being too polite or too hurt to fight back. He never imagined that his own mother would turn against him. Patricia taught me that sometimes the best revenge comes from unexpected places. She also showed me that standing up to bad behavior is not about being vindictive. It is about making sure there are consequences for actions. David thought he could have his cake and eat it too. He thought he could keep me as his stable, supportive wife while having fun with his young assistant. He thought his family would always support him no matter what he did. He was wrong on all counts. The most satisfying part of this whole experience was watching David realize that his actions had consequences he never saw coming. He was so arrogant, so confident that he could manage both relationships without anyone finding out. Patricia's involvement made the revenge even sweeter, because it showed David that his behavior was so unacceptable that even his own mother could not support him. The look on his face when she stood up at that dinner to expose him will stay with me forever. Now, whenever I hear about someone dealing with a cheating spouse, I tell them this story. I want them to know that they do not have to accept betrayal quietly. They do not have to protect their cheating partner's reputation or worry about causing embarrassment. Sometimes the best thing you can do is expose the truth and let the chips fall where they may. Sometimes karma needs a little help, and sometimes that help comes from the most unexpected places. My marriage to David is over, but my relationship with Patricia continues to grow stronger. She has become the mother I never had, and I have become the daughter she deserved. In a way, losing David brought us both something we had been missing. That is the funny thing about revenge. Sometimes you end up gaining more than you lose.